We began talking about page line settings in our last video, so let's continue learning about those. We looked at the template setup and decided that we didn't want to make any modifications to that at this time. Let's drop down to the layout editor and see what we can do with that. The layout editor allows us to change the basic layout of our theme. This is very convenient for us because it allows us to add and remove sidebars as we need them. If we end up having a lot of widgets in our sidebar, we may want to add another sidebar so that more widgets are available to the viewer on page load. Right now we have one sidebar that's located on the right side of the page. We can change that to have the sidebar on the left, have two sidebars on the right, two on the left, or one on each side. We will stay with one on the right. If we scroll down, we can go into even further detail about how those sidebars will appear. We can change the horizontal size of the main container, the width of our sidebar, which of course means a modification to the size of our main column as well. This is useful if you have a widget that requires more horizontal space. You can just come in here and widen the sidebar that contains that widget. If you scroll down, you'll again see this reset button, save options button, and options to restore options to default, and your import and export settings. Design control allows us to change the colors and background images in our page. This, again, is one of those things that non-designers love because it allows us to easily make changes without ever touching the style sheets, which we'd be forced to do if we didn't have this and wanted to change any colors on our site. We will be coming back to this screen to make some changes when we're ready to actually modify our site. Fortunately, all of these options are pretty self-explanatory, and some of them even have a short description to let you know exactly what it does. The typography control allows us to change the font on our site. This is often just a matter of personal preference, but there are fonts that are considered more readable than others. For instance, I'm a big fan of Arial, so let's change this to Arial. You can change the font of the headers, primary font, and secondary font independently from each other as well. We can also get a typekit script if we want to use typekit fonts, which gives us a very large pool of fonts from which to choose. The header and nav options can actually sound a bit misleading, as the options you see don't immediately make you think of headers and navigation. Here, you can choose whether or not to display your RSS feed icon and link. Add links for your social icons so that you can link to your Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, or YouTube profiles, whether or not to use child pages for secondary navigation, and enable or disable drop-down navigation. I think we'll enable drop-down navigation for now, simply because we're curious, and we'll save. As you can tell by now, PageLines gives you a great number of options. We haven't even covered them all. I don't want to go into too much detail on a PageLines tutorial, so I'll leave the rest up to you if you decide to use PageLines. In our next video, we're going to look at some more framework options that are alternatives to PageLines. They all have their own strengths and weaknesses, and it's important to try out several frameworks to find the one that works best for what you need. PageLines is pretty flexible and probably the most used, but there are others worth mentioning.